I am aware of how difficult it is for people to come forward. I believe strongly that those of us in positions of authority have a duty to act upon allegations of this nature.
Our number one concern was to make sure that they got the help they needed and that their wishes were respected. Those wishes included a very strong desire to keep this confidential. That was their request.
Pretty extraordinary circumstances and events which are unfolding before us, and my, how the mighty have fallen. I'm of course talking about Jian Ghomeshi, the former radio star at CBC, fired. All of what has unfolded over the course of the past few weeks was at the help of one woman, Lucy Decatur. She was an actress with the Trailer Park Boys, an Air Force captain in the Royal Canadian Air Force. She was the first one to put a very public face and name to the allegations against Jian Ghomeshi. That has touched off an extraordinary discussion and conversation that Canadians coast to coast are having right now. And part of that discussion is threaded through what we see unfolding on Parliament Hill. For more on this, I'm joined by the host of Battleground, David Akin, who of course had an exclusive interview in the Sun Media chain of papers, which is in Today, with one of the NDP MPs who spoke to us on the condition of anonymity. But David, first and foremost, you know, I put that preamble out there because I think a lot of what we're seeing unfold is that so-called Ghomeshi effect. And it's extraordinary seeing it happen right before our eyes.
You're absolutely right to do that. And in fact, in my discussion with the NDP MP, there's a direct connection. The reason all of this came to light, and let's just quickly review the facts, what you saw there with Trudeau and then Mulcair, that was a press conference Trudeau held on November the 5th, in which he announced the two MPs, Massimo Pichetti and Scott Andrews, were kicked out of his caucus because an NDP MP, the one I spoke to, came to him and with allegations of what he called then gross personal misconduct or serious personal conduct. We now know it involves some sexual harassment, and in the case of Pichetti, which you're watching there, the allegation that he had sex with the NDP MP I've talked to without her, quote, express consent. Now, how does that connect to Ghomeshi? This NDP MP was at Corporal Nathan Cirillo's funeral in Hamilton, you know, the week before November the 5th, and saw Trudeau, and was, you know, it was an emotional time for everybody there. And in the course of some discussion, and she said, with the Ghomeshi swirling in the wind, it came up that she essentially said, you know, you've got these two guys in your caucus who did this sort of thing. And that's when Trudeau first heard about it, and of course Trudeau went public and excommunicated these guys. The issue for the NDP MP here, and this is what Thomas Mulcair was talking about, she had no idea that that would be the consequences, that it'd be a very public disciplining for these two MPs, which has sparked the entire chain of events in which we now know some of the circumstances. We reporters on the Hill, pretty much everybody reporter knows on the Hill who the NDP MPs are, but at this point we think that there is, you know, a reasonable grounds to say we don't want to cause the victims, if there are victims here, any more pain. And I say if there are victims because in acknowledging some of the facts of the matter with Pichetti, this NDP MP says had sex but without express consent. So what does that mean? I asked her, did it mean you said no? No, she didn't say no. Did you say yes? No, she didn't say yes. And then Canadian Press has an extraordinary detail in their coverage. Canadian Press, citing anonymous sources, says she produced a condom in the middle of this sexual act. And again, now you go to, well, consent. If the woman is producing a condom, does that say something about consent?
Right.
I asked this NDP MP about this. She would not confirm that detail on the record. But I can tell you, New Democrats generally are hot as a button over that detail. They say it's being leaked by the Liberals, who are trying to try this woman essentially in the public sphere.
Well, and this is what it's extraordinary because you and all of your parliamentary press gallery colleagues, you know who both of these NDP MPs are. We're all choosing not to reveal their identities for all the right reasons. But conversely, many would say, David, that these two male MPs, Pichetti and Andrews, they are unfairly being tried and have adamantly denied any of the accusations and allegations against them. This is an extraordinary set of circumstances because now we have the Speaker ordering a third-party investigation, the leader of the third party asking for a third-party investigation. I mean, this is all just
we don't know where don't know where the process is going. Everybody's saying, you know, we'd like to see some process. But let me go back to this one point. You're right. Pichetti and Andrews have been outed, and who outed them? It was Justin Trudeau who did that.
It was Justin Trudeau.
And he's been criticized by the NDP for doing this. So if you're someone else on this, let's say a reporter, should we make two wrongs make a right? Should we out the NDP MPs to be fair or something like that? No, I don't think two wrongs make a right. I don't necessarily think that those two Liberal MPs should have been outed and censured. The NDP are making some credible suggestions that there were alternative processes available to Trudeau. I'm sympathetic to Trudeau's situation where he says he didn't even want to be caught 3-4 months down the road by some New Democrat saying, you heard about this harassment and you did nothing,
well,
sir.
And that's what I mean in light of the Gomeshi effect, David, because this was all right around, within a week of each other. And had it been revealed, as you said, that Justin Trudeau was made aware of these allegations, he would have been, just censured. So it was a damned if you do, damned if you don't. Do I agree with how he handled it? No, I don't. But let me ask you this. There's other aspects and little threads to this story, much of the information that you've gotten, we've seen in other media, that one of these women that spoke to Justin Trudeau didn't tell her own party leader. And there's politics to all of this as well. So what do we know about that?
This event, this sexual incident took place last March. And after the incident took place, the NDP MP was uncomfortable about it, did not challenge Pichetti directly. They really only spoke a handful of times, really just in passing in the halls. But she did bring it to the attention of others in her caucus, some caucus colleagues. She said she was ashamed. And, did you want to sort of tell your boss, i.e. the leader, Tom Mulcair, or Nicole Turmel, the whip? She's 71 years old, bit of a mother figure to a lot of these younger MPs. And this MP is younger. So she thought she was bringing it forward in a manner that would produce what she wanted, which was this. She just, and still wants, just an apology from Pichetti.
Yeah. And
she also says perhaps he should seek some counseling. He says, by the way, and this should be very clear, he issued a statement saying, listen, I'm innocent of anything here. She's disappointed this is all being played out in the media, and he's looking forward to some investigation. So that's his side. So she is really not looking for some grand inquisition. She is trying to deal with it formally and didn't tell Mulcair. And then for whatever reason, as I say, maybe it's because she'd seen some inaction. It's hard to get inside somebody's head, has been through this. She opens up to Trudeau. But your point about Gomeshi, remember what we were saying about the CBC at the time Gomeshi broke. Where was the CBC for years and years and years? This is rattling around, and maybe the Liberals are spooked by that and saying, we don't want to get tarred with what the CBC is going through, and they acted. Did they act in haste? These are the decisions leaders get paid to make.
And this will be the ongoing debate. It's a little bit of time we have left, David, and we appreciate you joining us because I know you're preparing for your show at 5 o'clock Eastern. One of the other aspects to this is the identity of these women. Again, I go back to that we've all committed in the media. Most of us in the media have committed that we will not reveal their identity, even though you have spoken directly on the phone with one of them. Do you think that will last? Do these, the one in particular that you spoke with and the other one, do they realize that perhaps, sadly, at some point, their identity will be revealed, and every reason why they didn't want it will all come to the fore?
They're very worried about that, and here's how it was phrased to me by the woman who spoke to me. One day down the road, may speak to children, and they may look her up saying, I was an MP back in the day, and they might Google her name, and this is the only incident that's going to come up. Or they're back in their riding, talking to school children, and this is the only thing they're going to be referred to. So I'm sympathetic to that. That said, will this ever come out of who it was? I suspect somewhere down the line it may, and there's sort of, you can probably hunt around the internet and find some whispers. For our standpoint, the organization we work for, we're taking the position, when we see a public interest, and the public interest we see with Pichetti and Andrews is, their constituents want to know what they do. Should they elect them in or not? For the others, I'm willing to be convinced there's a public interest. Right now, I don't necessarily sense I see one, but can they hold this a secret forever? Ottawa is not exactly known for holding its secrets.
David, thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. He'll be back, of course, at 5 p.m. Eastern. Host of Battleground, David Akin, joining us from Parliament Hill.